Max Verstappen is not furious because Red Bull cost him a result. He is furious because Red Bull may have cost him trust. 2 races, 2 rear wing failures. Same terrifying outcome. Austria was a warning. Silverstone was a moment that warning became impossible to ignore. Lap 48, Stowe Corner. Verstappen chasing Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari for second place. One of the fastest corners of the race. Full commitment. No time to think. No room to save a car that suddenly stopped behaving. Then the rear wing was not fully attaching. The downforce vanished. The rear snapped. Max spun. And this is why Red Bull should be alarmed. Verstappen did not call it bad luck. He called it super dangerous. He said he was lucky in Austria and lucky again at Silverstone. That is not a driver complaining about pace. That is a driver warning his own team that the car crossed a line because a slow car can lose points. A bad strategy can lose a podium. But a rear wing failure in a high-speed corner can take away something far more important: confidence. And once Max Verstappen starts questioning whether the car will hold when he turns in, Red Bull's biggest problem is no longer Ferrari, McLaren, or Mercedes. It is doubt. Subscribe to the channel. To understand why that doubt is so dangerous, you have to understand what Max Verstappen is really doing when he turns into a corner like Stowe. He is not just driving fast. He is making a decision before the car gives him the full answer. That is what separates Formula One from normal driving. On a normal road, if something feels wrong, you slow down. You wait. You adjust. You give yourself time. At Silverstone, there is no time. When Verstappen arrives at Stowe on lap 48, chasing Lewis Hamilton's Ferrari for second place, he is already committed before the danger fully appears. The steering input is already there. The car is already loaded. The rear wing is already supposed to be doing its job. And that is the key. Supposed to be, because in that moment, Max is trusting something he cannot see. Downforce. It is invisible, but it is everything. It is the force that helps press the car into the track. It is what allows a Formula One car to take corners at speeds that should feel impossible. It is what makes the tires bite harder, makes the car feel planted, and gives the driver confidence to attack. The rear wing is a huge part of that. When it works, the driver can lean on the car. When it fails, the driver can lose the rear before he has a fair chance to save it. That is exactly why Verstappen was furious. The rear wing was not fully attaching. The car did not have the rear downforce he expected. And when that support disappeared, the spin was not a normal mistake. It was the car changing its behavior after Max had already trusted it. That is the difference Red Bull cannot ignore. A driver can accept a difficult car. A difficult car talks to you. It tells you where the weakness is. Maybe the rear slides on corner entry. Maybe the front refuses to turn. Maybe the tires overheat after a few laps. Maybe the car feels nervous in fast corners. Those problems are frustrating, but they can be managed. Max can adapt to that. He has done it his entire career. But an unpredictable car is different. An unpredictable car does not warn you clearly. It does not let you build rhythm. It does not give you a stable limit to attack. It lets you believe the grip will be there, then removes it when the corner is already started. That is not difficult. That is dangerous. Imagine sprinting across a bridge. You are not checking every board beneath your feet. You are running because you trust the structure. Then, without warning, one plank drops away. You do not fall because you forgot how to run. You fall because the thing beneath you failed. That is what Silverstone represented for Verstappen. The car asked for full commitment. Then the rear wing failed to support that commitment. And this is where Austria makes the situation explode. Because if Silverstone had been the first time, Red Bull could call it a terrible isolated failure. Painful, dangerous, unacceptable, but still isolated. But Austria had already happened. 1 week earlier, the active rear wing failed during qualifying. Verstappen's session was wrecked. Red Bull saw the warning before Silverstone ever began. That means the Silverstone failure did not arrive as a complete shock. It arrived as a repeat. And repeats are what make drivers angry. The exact fault may have been different, but the outcome was the same. Verstappen himself made that clear. Different fault, same outcome. That phrase is the whole problem. because Red Bull may separate those failures in the garage. The engineers may see two separate causes, two different details, two different repairs, two different explanations. But from the cockpit, Max sees something simpler. The wing failed, the downforce vanished, the rear snapped. He was lucky, again, and that word, again, is why this became bigger than one broken part. Because once the same dangerous outcome happens twice, the driver no longer asks only what failed. He asks why the system still allowed that outcome to reach him. That is a much harder question for Red Bull, because it forces them to look beyond one component and ask whether the concept itself has enough protection built into it. It forces them to ask whether the mechanism behaves safely under real race stress. It forces them to ask whether the chase for performance has created a risk that the driver is now paying for. And in Formula One, that is a brutal conversation. Every team wants to find an advantage. Every team pushes the rules. Every team builds parts that live on the edge. Red Bull's rear wing mechanism was described as unconventional compared with rivals like Ferrari. And in this sport, unconventional can be brilliant. A clever design can win races. A bold concept can change a season. A strange idea can become the thing rivals wish they had built first. But only if it works when the pressure is highest. Only if the driver can trust it. Because speed without trust is not an advantage. It is a threat. That is a line Red Bull is now standing on. They may believe the design has performance. They may believe the two faults are separate. They may believe the next fix will solve the problem properly. But Max Verstappen does not need belief from the factory. He needs proof from the car. He needs to turn into the next high-speed corner and feel the rear stay planted. He needs a wing to behave exactly as expected. He needs the downforce to arrive when his instincts are already committed. Not a fraction too late. Not mostly right. Exactly right. Because at the limit, almost working is not enough. That is why Laurent Meki's response mattered. He admitted Max was right not to be happy. He said it was very unpleasant for drivers to be let down by the car in high-speed corners in 2 consecutive races. And he accepted that Red Bull had failed to prevent it happening again. That admission did 2 things at once. It showed Red Bull understood the seriousness of the problem, but it also confirmed Verstappen's fear. The team had failed to stop the repeat. And once that is public, the pressure changes. Now the next explanation must be stronger than the last one. The next fix must be more convincing than the first. The next promise must survive the memory of Austria and Silverstone. Because after the first failure, Red Bull still had trust to spend. After the second, that trust is no longer automatic. And for a driver like Verstappen, automatic trust is everything. His driving style depends on it. He attacks early. He commits hard. He carries speed in places where hesitation costs everything. He can live with a sharp car because he feels the limit with extraordinary precision. But if he starts questioning whether the rear wing will hold, even for a tiny moment, Red Bull loses something precious. Not his skill, not his courage, his certainty. And certainty is performance. That is what makes this issue so dangerous for the team. Doubt does not have to be dramatic to be costly. It does not need to turn Max into a cautious driver overnight. It only needs to appear in one corner for one fraction of a second at the exact moment when instinct should take over. A tiny lift, a slightly safer entry, a little less faith in the rear. In Formula One, that is enough to change a lap, enough to change qualifying, enough to change a race. That is why Red Bull's biggest task is not simply repairing the wing. It is repairing the silence in Verstappen's mind before turn-in. No question, no hesitation, no memory of the rear disappearing. Just commitment. That is what the car has to give him again. And Silverstone made that much harder, because the failure came during a season that was already under pressure. Verstappen was not calmly protecting a championship lead. He was sitting 7th in the championship, 103 points behind Kimi Antonelli. He had already retired from 3 of the first 9 races because of car problems. That matters, because when a driver is already chasing, every technical problem feels heavier. A qualifying issue does not stand alone. A race failure does not stand alone. A dangerous wing problem does not stand alone. They connect. Austria connects to Silverstone. The retirements connect to the championship gap. The lost points connect to a deeper feeling that the season is slipping away because of problems outside the driver's control. And for Max Verstappen, that is almost unbearable. He can fight rivals. He can fight pressure. He can fight a difficult car. But he cannot fight missing downforce when the car is already turned in. Nobody can. That helplessness is the core of his anger. For a few seconds at Silverstone, the most controlled driver in Red Bull's world was turned into a passenger by Red Bull's own car. And that is why Block 1 matters. Because this is not really about a spin. It is about the first major crack in the trust between Verstappen and the machine underneath him. The spin ended quickly. The question it created may follow Red Bull into every fast corner that comes next. But the real problem for Red Bull begins after spin. Because once Verstappen says the word dangerous, the conversation changes completely. Now this is no longer just a technical failure. It is a question of responsibility. And responsibility is where Formula One teams get uncomfortable because the sport loves performance. It celebrates risk. It rewards clever ideas. It pushes engineers to build parts that live on the edge of what seems possible. But when a part fails in a way that makes the driver feel exposed, the same clever idea starts to look very different. That is exactly what happened to Red Bull's rear wing. Their mechanism was described as unconventional compared with rivals like Ferrari. And in Formula One, unconventional can be a beautiful word. It can mean bold. It can mean aggressive. It can mean a team has found a path through the rulebook that nobody else fully understood. That is how teams gain an advantage. That is how championships are built. But there is a dark side to innovation. The more complex a system becomes, the more ways it can betray you. A simple part can still fail, but a moving part, an active part, a part that has to behave in exactly the right way at exactly the right moment, carries a different kind of pressure. It is not enough for it to work most of the time. It has to work when the driver is already committed. It has to work under load. It has to work when the car is vibrating. The tires are worn, the air is disturbed, and the driver is attacking a high-speed corner because a podium position is still alive. That is a world where Red Bull's idea had to survive. And at Silverstone, it did not. This is where Laurent Mekies had no room to hide. He admitted that Max was right not to be happy. He admitted it was very unpleasant for drivers to be let down by the car in high-speed corners in 2 consecutive races. And he admitted Red Bull had failed to prevent it from happening again. That last part is the one that matters most. Failed to prevent it. Because Austria was not a secret. Austria was not a hidden weakness that only appeared later in the data. Austria was a warning everybody inside Red Bull should have felt.